The Quentin Tarantino World Cup, Semi-Final 2, Inglourious Basterds versus Pulp Fiction. Linchpins of Tarantino's lifetime work, Inglourious Basterds and Pulp Fiction each feature moments of cinematic greatness. Genuine classics, both use striking imagery, powerful lines of dialogue, and some of the most story-shattering twists Hollywood will ever see. Each winning 3-1 in their quarterfinals, knocking out films from Tarantino's early years. There's no guarantees as they face off to complete the billing for the final against Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There aren't many films harder to summarize than Pulp Fiction. A true anthology-style narrative, the sprawling nature of its storytelling leans on action scenes and immense tension to guide the film through its ever-changing desires. A unique take compared to films with a similar purpose, and it becomes an enormous part of the feature's appeal. The loosely tied together scenes work as well as they do because of the way the characters bleed into each other's plot lines. But this isn't necessarily a credit to the story as such, showing more of a passion for its characters than anything else. Inglourious Basterds is essentially the opposite. One of Tarantino's history-bending ideas, the plotline is incredibly well structured, with perfect pacing and a flow only a great screenwriter could filter into the script. Tarantino creates an alternate world for the authentic characters, each with a purpose and a goal, well mapped out through the story's timeline. Pulp Fiction succeeds in its design, but that credit cannot be given to the story. Standalone, it is certainly one of Tarantino's weakest, with separate elements causing its transformation into becoming a cult sensation. Inglourious Basterds is one of Tarantino's most engaging, suspenseful, and expertly crafted plotlines, and it takes the lead in the first set. Pulp Fiction is run entirely by its characters. The sheer number of memorable, dynamic personalities Tarantino throws into the film is reason enough to appreciate its quality. The consistency and depth to each role, however important or fleeting their position within the film is, becomes the reason for its captivating qualities. The stability within the performances, including the revival of John Travolta's career, is incredible, and a true asset to Tarantino's ability as a young director to get the best out of his cast. An audience will always latch on to exciting, passionate character, and these are littered throughout Pulp Fiction. This same success features in Inglourious Basterds, with Hans Landa showing such a strength as a great villain to root against. Yet outside of his film-stealing role, the character creations don't possess such an impetus for confrontation or purposeful action. This is in part for the scene structure, leaving little flexibility for character movement, but also due to the objectives held by so many characters. Infiltrating the Nazi ranks is no easy feat, and avoiding confrontation is at the top of their individual checklists. That's not to say the film is void of action and confrontation, because it isn't, but the slower pacing and predictable character motives makes for a slower piece. Hans Landa will always give Inglourious Basterds a chance in this category, but Pulp Fiction's seemingly endless run of perfect character creations gives it the point. Few films in cinema history can offer as many influential performances and personas as Pulp Fiction. Using Andrei Sekula as cinematographer, Pulp Fiction, a somewhat Tarantino rarity, released in the years preceding his partnership with Robert Richardson. Appealing from the art production side of cinematic visuals, Tarantino's early budget pieces lack the impressive beauty his recent releases boast, but they still hold a distinct quality. Pulp Fiction beat out Jackie Brown because its production design is still a cut above, but it doesn't necessarily hold up against more expansive features. Inglourious Basterds comes as an entirely different style of filmmaking, using both an upgraded art quality and photographic setup. Vital to the film's success, the period costumes and enormous set pieces consistently fill the screen. The nature of the film lends itself to the idea of grand set pieces, and Tarantino ensures the standard is consistent throughout. It is the juxtaposition of Pulp Fiction's often low-key stylizing, and despite it hitting on great costumes, the instances where Tarantino is given a greater budget and more flexibility show how incredible his films can look, and Inglourious Basterds falls perfectly into that category, taking the point and a 2-1 lead. Similar to the competition Pulp Fiction faced in its quarter-final against Jackie Brown, this matchup comes down to the masterful script of Inglourious Basterds against the powerful individual moments of Pulp Fiction's twisting story. But perhaps these moments have been oversold in post-watch discussion. The consequences of character actions are so important in Pulp Fiction, and the dialogue becomes a signifier for these moments. Tarantino expertly crafted situations for the characters, whereas Inglourious Basterds offers uneasy conversations consistently, with much of the tension wrapped in the crafted dialogue. Many of Tarantino's greatest scenes take place within Inglourious Basterds, albeit most of them utilising Hans Lander, but the script as a whole is arguably Tarantino's masterpiece. Pulp Fiction makes the audience wait for the next great moment. Inglourious Basterds makes every scene one of those moments. Just because Pulp Fiction's sphere of influence is so large, doesn't necessarily mean it is the better script, and a huge part of its success has to be labelled as the appeal of its subject matter. Inglourious Basterds is the better script, and arguably has the better individual moments, just with a little less swearing. Meaning Inglourious Basterds takes the early win and reaches the final of the Quentin Tarantino World Cup, a matchup against Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Continuously analysed in almost every way possible, Pulp Fiction is the ultimate teenage film dream. A low-budget crime flick with a love of drugs, guns and swearing, it is the cult film that hit the mainstream and further, cementing itself as Tarantino's most recognisable feature for multiple reasons. Tarantino's filmography would not exist as it does without his breakout in 1994, and ensured his success within Hollywood for decades afterwards. But that doesn't mean it's his greatest film, nor his most enjoyable. An ethereal movie with infinite levels of hype, Pulp Fiction will rarely live up to the expectations now placed on its name, but the legacy that comes with it has served Tarantino well. Objectively, it is still a classic, and essentially a solid piece of cinema, but it is not Tarantino's best feature, and there is a clear reasoning for that. To move on to the Quentin Tarantino World Cup final, click the link on screen. There's also a link to Pulp Fiction's previous matchup.